Hello there. Welcome into a Wednesday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening. And that app, of course, is sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health, and well-being for all, a veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming your way over the course of the program, and I'd love to get your thoughts at 719-247-1313. You can call or text into the show. A couple of guests. Jay Ritchie is going to join me at the bottom of the hour, host of Tee to Green Radio. He is going, I don't think he's left yet, he's going to Bethpage for the Ryder Cup. He'll join me for a little preview coming up at the bottom of the hour. Jessica Mendoza said to join me at 4:20 to discuss Broncos things, maybe some Rams as well. But the rest of the time, you and me. Great conversation yesterday. I'm hoping that I pique your interest enough today to continue on with all the text and calls and things that we got yesterday. Let's start with the Broncos here. They're going to get a little extra time to figure some things out. And what they need to figure out more than anything else by Monday, in what is, am I the first person to say this? Probably not. I'm going to be one of them, I would think. Must win. Must win on Monday. No ifs, ands, or buts. Have to win. Have to beat the Bengals on Monday. Don't care if they have Dre Greenlaw. Don't care if they have Evan Ingram. You're at home Monday night. The way things are going, you must beat the Cincinnati Bengals, who do not have Joe Burrow. So let me get that out of the way first of all. As far as the thing that the Broncos need to fix now so they win a must-win game on Monday night, the penalties. The Broncos this year, if you take the number of penalties they incur per game and the yardage that comes along with that, they would be the sixth most undisciplined team in the National Football League. Because if you're committing penalties, that's what you are. You're undisciplined. Giants, Titans, Bears, Jaguars, and the Buccaneers are the only teams more undisciplined based on penalties per game and penalty yards per game than the Denver Broncos. And the one team that obviously sticks out is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who keep winning. Well, they have Baker Mayfield, who is right now doing exactly what we're talking about Bo Nix can't do, which is win the Broncos games. Baker Mayfield, good enough to overcome a lack of discipline from his team. Baker Mayfield, good enough to be able to still win games despite being put routinely in second and third and long situations. Bo Nix is not. Okay? But that's not a good trend, Bucs fans. I'm sure Todd Bowles is talking about the number of penalties. Essentially, the Broncos have added 2 penalties worth 20 yards. 2 10-yard penalties each game is what they're adding to their ledger. This last year was a pretty disciplined team. They had tied for the 20th most penalties per game. Like, they were in the good half of the league. They were middle of the pack in both. They weren't the most disciplined team, but they were far from the most undisciplined. And they unequivocally are one of the most undisciplined teams in the NFL through 3 games. In fact, you just take week 3 alone, they were one of only 5 teams in the NFL to incur double-digit penalties week 3. And I will add to it's not just the quantity, it's the quality, or I guess you wouldn't call penalties quality penalties. But it's the significance. It's not just the sheer numbers here, it's the significance of these penalties. Think about some of the penalties they incurred against the Chargers. Again, one of the 5 teams in the NFL to incur double-digit penalties in a week 3 game. Only 5 teams did it. And I would say probably the other 4 did not have them at such crucial times. Hufanga pass interference when the Chargers had 2nd and 14. That's an automatic first down. Offside on Nick Benito when the Chargers were punting. 4th and 4, Benito lines up offside. Gives the Chargers an automatic first down. Adam Troutman holding, starting the Broncos behind the chains to start a drive. Pat Surtain, illegal contact on a 2nd and 9. That's an automatic first down. Broncos have it 2nd and goal. Troy Franklin commits an offensive pass interference. The drive right before the Chargers got the ball back and tied the game, they had the Adam Troutman offensive offside that even Bo Nix after the game's like, I didn't even know that was a thing. And then Garrett Bowles has a face mask penalty. And then, of course, what ultimately ended up being the game-tying drive for the Chargers, a Talanoa Hufanga body slam gives the Chargers the ball at the 50. I mean, the penalties, the number itself would not be acceptable. But these are all back-breaking, game-changing, drive-altering penalties. Did I get to 10? I think they had 10 total penalties. I think that's all of them. Now, some are like, look, illegal contact on Pat Surtain. Even for the best defensive player in the league, that's going to happen. Right? From time to time. It wasn't on an especially crucial drive. So there are some of these that you look at and you go, okay, they're going to happen. A holding call, right? Not ideal, but they happen. But these other ones, like the offside on Benito and the offside on Troutman and the unnecessary roughness penalty, like these are the penalties that you're just like, why are they happening? For a team that, again, is so, I don't know if they were middle of the road last year, to my earlier point in penalties. Right? So I don't want to hold them up as like this pillar of discipline. Right? But they weren't this, and the whole idea of this Broncos team is that they're supposed to be improving. They're supposed to be better than they were a year ago. And if there's any place on this team, any aspect of this team that you would almost bank on being better, it's not Bo Nix, it's not the defense, it's not the running game, it's not the offensive line, it's penalties. Because even when the Broncos weren't that bad, last year, Sean Payton was constantly harping on the number of penalties that the Broncos incurred. And not only has that not gone better, it's gone worse. Significantly worse. So here's what everyone's trying to figure out. How? How in the world? Jessica Mendoza asked me this question last night on KKTV when I was on her show. How can a team coached by Sean Payton, who constantly preaches details, discipline, winning on the margins, be one of the 6 most undisciplined teams in the NFL to start this season? And I don't think anybody has a great answer. I don't even think Sean Payton can truly put his finger on why this is happening. Sean Payton on Monday was asked about what the difference is between teams that can finish games and teams that can't, right? Because these penalties are costing the Broncos a chance to win the game. Sean Payton, listen to this. He talks for 46 seconds. Tell me if the answer to the question that was asked is in here. What is the difference between teams that are able to finish out games and teams that can't?
It's a journey here. And so when the season's over with, let's look at this team and say, hey, can they finish? And, we'll be able to point to week 2 and 3. We weren't able to, but I think of certain teams that I've been a part of or coached. And I think that the corrections and the improvement, any good team really, and even last year, we had a wild card playoff team. There's a stretch where you begin to win games, and you play better, and that's what's due for this team. That's what has to happen for this team. That's what has to be on our horizon.
There was not an answer. He didn't answer the question. All he said was essentially, we did this last year. We started to win games last year. And teams that are good start to win games. And we're going to start to win games. Yeah, but why can't you win them now? Why are you committing the most ridiculous penalties that we're having to dive into an NFL rule book to figure out, do they exist? What is this call that is being made against the Denver Broncos? So if Sean Payton doesn't have an answer and Bo Nix doesn't even know that offensive offsides is a thing, I'll take a crack at it. See what you think at 719-247-1313. This team, and it's going back to the question that Sean Payton ran 5 laps around. This team can't win close games. Why? Could it be that they're not clutch? That they're the opposite of clutch? Could we be looking at a team filled with players that don't know how to win? And when they are in a situation where they can win, where they can snatch victory from the jaws of defeat, or vice versa, they will falter. They will make boneheaded mistakes. They are not locked in. The pressure of what that game is and the pressure of what this season is supposed to be, that's the best I can come up with. This team is cracking under pressure. Where's that pressure coming from? Internally, Sean Payton, the national media, the fan base. For every player, it might be a different thing, but there is pressure from all of those different places. And you've been in 3 close games to start this season. All 3 of these games have been 1-score games. And in 2 of the 3, you didn't come through. And even in the Titans, you look at that more as the Titans faltering versus the Denver Broncos necessarily succeeding. That's the best I can come up with, and that's better than any answer that is actually coming from the Denver Broncos. Everybody can identify the problem. Everyone sees what the problem is. Everybody knows it has to be fixed. Nobody knows the reason. Least of all, Sean Payton. I don't know. Maybe they got to run more sprints at practice. Maybe they got to run lines for every penalty that they commit. But this is an undisciplined team that has, over the last couple of years, most of the personnel is the same, right? From last year to this year. Doesn't come through in the clutch. Doesn't win close games. Folds, makes mistakes. Can Sean Payton coach that out of them? I suppose we'll find out. 719-24-7. 1313. Why do you think the Broncos are committing not only the number of penalties, but penalties in the worst possible time to commit a penalty? Coming up next. I can't believe that this is an actual question. And I heard it on this radio station earlier today when it comes to Russell Wilson and his future in New York. Get to that next here on Extra Sports 1300. I could not believe my ears this morning when I'm driving in and I hear Dan Patrick ask the question whether Russell Wilson should ask for his release from the New York Giants. This is after I get sent a, what was that? Producer Ray's in here. FanDuel put that out yesterday about Russell Wilson. A graphic basically proposing that Russell Wilson gets traded to the Cincinnati Bengals because Joe Burrow's hurt. I could not believe either thing because this should be it for Russell. Who should want, like, let me start with the question Dan Patrick was asking this morning. Why would Russell Wilson ask for his release? Because if he's going to ask for his release, now that Jackson Dart, by the way, if you missed it, is now going to be the starter, the rookie quarterback that they took in the first round, is going to be the starter this weekend against LA. By asking the question, and I actually don't know where Dan Patrick and his crew fell on this issue. I don't. I'm just saying the concept to me is laughable because if Russell Wilson were to ask for release, that would then mean that there is a chance that he could get a better gig somewhere else. Right? That's the premise here. Russell Wilson should ask to be released by the New York Giants so he can pursue a better job opportunity. There should be no better job opportunity left in the NFL. So unless he just has bad feelings towards the Giants, if he's willing to go be a backup somewhere else, then okay, but that's not why you ask the question. You ask the question thinking, well, Russell Wilson is accomplished all of this and he deserves to go out better and maybe he could be a starter somewhere else. No, he can't. No, he can't. Since being traded from Seattle, he has gone, he played 30 games with the Broncos, then 11 with Pittsburgh, and now 3 with the Giants. Do you notice a trend here? Teams, maybe there is another team out there that would take Russell Wilson thinking what the Giants thought and what the Steelers thought and what the Broncos thought. But when are they going to realize that Russell Wilson is done? One game? They going to bring in, are the Bengals going to bring in Russell Wilson? So wouldn't this be perfect, by the way, given that the Denver Broncos are hosting the Bengals on Monday night? Now, I know Russell Wilson wouldn't end up playing in that game, but just suspend your your disbelief for a moment here. Wouldn't be if Russell Wilson asks for his release, gets it, decides to sign with the Cincinnati Bengals, or the Bengals trade for him, which is even worse, and Russell Wilson is in a Bengals uniform Monday night and Adam Power Field. That'd be crazy. And then he'd play in just that one game for Cincinnati, and Zach Taylor and company would be like, this dude can't play. And then that would be it for him. And they go back to Jake Browning. That seems to fit the trend. 30 games with the Broncos, down to 11 with Pittsburgh before they said, yeah, we're done with this guy. The Giants lasted all of 3 weeks. According to the ACT, aren't there questions like this on the ACT? Like, if you take away this much off of each number, what's the next number in the sequence? It's got to be 1. Or better yet, 0. As in, Russell Wilson should not be voluntarily picked as a starter for any NFL team ever again. It is it's crazy to me that people would, it's the same thinking that the Giants had, that the Steelers had, that the Broncos had. And each time it happens, it's more ridiculous. The Steelers picking up Russell Wilson was more ridiculous than the Broncos. And the Giants picking up Russell Wilson is more ridiculous than the Steelers and infinitely more ridiculous than the Denver Broncos. The next team that would do it would be the most idiotic yet. There should not be, and there is not should, there isn't. There isn't another team in the National Football League that Russell Wilson could actually start for. So why not just stay in New York? And if something were to happen to Jackson Dart, then you'd be right back in there. This is it. Russell Wilson is done. The only thing that he should be doing with the Giants organization, going into Joe Shane's office, is saying, I'm retiring. That's it. Because if he's not willing to be a backup at this stage in his career and just finish out his career mentoring Jackson Dart, then that would feed the notion that a lot of people have had about Russell Wilson, that he is not one of the guys, that he's not pulling in the same direction, that he's very much separated from his teammates. If he's not willing to stay there in New York and help mentor Jackson Dart, then it would be exactly what we were talking about when he was in Denver. That he's got celebrity status, that there's a different set of rules for him. You're a veteran quarterback who is washed. You get benched. Now be a good teammate. Be a good teammate. Don't ask out because you think some other team's going to be dumb enough to pick you up as your starter. Mentor Jackson Dart. 719-247-1313. Could not believe that. The idea that any team in the NFL would want Russell Wilson to be their starter. And the idea that Russell Wilson should be so conceited and delusional that he would ask the Giants to be released. Man, why didn't anybody listen to Richard Sherman? Why didn't anybody listen to him? Maybe he speaks too loud and it's difficult to hone in on. I don't know. Stay in New York, mentor Jackson Dart, have a graceful end to your career. And if Russell Wilson's career is over, let's have the conversation. You know what the conversation is. Is Russell Wilson a Hall of Famer? That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. Coming up tonight on Extra Sports 1300, the Switchbacks are hosting I-25 rivals New Mexico United. Roland and I will hit the air at 6:30. Kickoff is at 7 right here on Extra Sports 1300. You can also listen to the game online or through the app for free. So Russell Wilson, many are theorizing where Russ is going to end up this season in the NFL. I am moving past that because I don't think it matters. I don't think he's going anywhere. I understand why, for engagement farming purposes, you say, well, Bengals don't have Joe Burrow. Russell Wilson's in the news. Let's put our hands together. Like, I get it. Engagement farming, social media. Like, I understand the way that the game is played. If that were even, let's say, based in reality, if I'm Zach Taylor, I would ride with Jake Browning 10 times out of 10 over Russell Wilson. If not Cincinnati, where? Where? Donnie has a suggestion. Says Russell Wilson to Cleveland. It just makes sense, right? They're acquiring quarterbacks, either washed quarterbacks or unproven quarterbacks like Infinity Stones there in Cleveland. You got Flacco, you got Shador, you got Dylan Gabriel, you got Kenny Pickett. Now you're going to add Russell Wilson to the mix. The greatest collection of has-been and never was quarterbacks in the history of football. But I don't, where he ends up this year, I don't know or particularly care, because I don't think we see Russell Wilson start a football game again this year, unless there's an injury. Is he going to end up in Canton? I'm just pausing there to allow you to process this. But I don't think you need to process it. I think with Russell Wilson, it's got to be a gut reaction. Is Russell Wilson a Hall of Famer? And your gut reaction would be probably no. Not probably no. I'm theorizing that the answer would probably be no. You wouldn't think so. And it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be, because, and I've heard the argument like Matthew Stafford versus Russell Wilson, just reverse the timeline here. Russell Wilson starts his career with the Giants and eventually ends up with the Seattle Seahawks and does all the things that he did with Seattle. Because the argument is Matthew Stafford is only a Hall of Famer over Russell Wilson because Matthew Stafford finished out his career stronger. That may not be untrue. But then what do you do with that information? You say Matthew Stafford, Hall of Famer, Russell Wilson, not Hall of Famer. Or you say neither should be a Hall of Famer. Those are the acceptable answers. Stafford, yes. Russ, no. Or both, no. The fact that Russell Wilson is ending his career like this matters. It matters. Okay, Russell Wilson was, and this isn't the best analogy, but bear with me here. To me, people saying that Russell Wilson should be in the Hall of Fame just for what he did with Seattle and nothing he has done since damages that case feels similar to when people say that Barry Bonds would have been a Hall of Famer if he would have, before he took steroids. Oh, he was a Hall of Famer, so it doesn't matter that Barry Bonds took steroids. He was a Hall of Famer before that. They just made it more so. Yeah. One, I don't believe you. If Russell Wilson would have retired after throwing the interception to Malcolm Butler, you would not have put him in the Hall of Fame. Secondly, it matters that Barry Bonds took steroids when he went to the Giants. That's part of his legacy, part of his career. It matters. The people that make that argument about Barry Bonds being a Hall of Famer just with Pittsburgh alone drive me up the wall. It matters your career in its totality. And Russell Wilson was very good, not great, never received one MVP vote. He was never the best in the league in a particular year, but he was very good. Very good player in Seattle. Cannot take that away from him. But he wasn't arguably the best quarterback in the league at any juncture. And then he has spent the last 5 years grifting, going from team to team, and each team is booting him out of their city faster than the last one. This matters. I'm sorry, it does. And the problem for Russell Wilson is this is not, like Johnny Unitas going to the Chargers. Right? This isn't a blip. He's been doing this for 5 years. Not to mention some of the thoughts that immediately go into your head, because like with Eli, there are people, and you know how I feel about Eli. Eli is not a Hall of Fame quarterback, but people are choosing to go, well, look at what he did in the Super Bowls. Okay, look at what Russell Wilson did in the Super Bowls. Went to 2 Super Bowls. Won one of them. Okay, the one he won, you or I could have quarterbacked the Seattle Seahawks to a victory in that Super Bowl because the Broncos were so woefully unprepared to go up against the Seattle Seahawks defense and so scared of the stage that they were stepping on, it didn't matter. So where at least Eli completed the pass to David Tyree. What did Russell Wilson do in Super Bowl 48? I can't remember a single thing. But he's a Super Bowl champion. Fine. So is Trent Dilfer. Put him in the Hall of Fame. Second Super Bowl. The lasting image is Russell Wilson throwing the interception to Malcolm Butler. Great play. Great coaching. Or for New England. Poor coaching by Pete Carroll. Characterize it however you want. The image of Russell Wilson in a Super Bowl is nothing that happened in Super Bowl 48 and the way that's the Super Bowl with the Patriots. I almost said Super Bowl 50. I'm thinking Broncos here. So I'm sorry. It just doesn't. Not only does the stuff that he has done since being traded to Denver matter, but let's not pretend or play revisionist history here that Russell Wilson was a heavily respected, widely regarded as one of the best quarterbacks in the league the entire time he was in Seattle. He was never in the conversation for the best quarterback in the league. Didn't get one MVP vote. By comparison, okay, and I don't love to do this, but some people like to make the, comparing to other people in the Hall of Fame or that will get into the Hall of Fame. Drew Brees is going to get in the Hall of Fame, right? He and Larry Fitzgerald headline the finalists for this year's class. They're shoo-ins. Drew Brees, I forgot about this, never won an MVP, so a little bit of a knock on him. He did finish second more than any other quarterback in the history of the NFL. He finished second in the MVP voting 4 times. Always the bridesmaid, never the bride, apparently. But I think it actually speaks to Drew Brees' greatness. The first MVP vote he got runner-up was to LaDainian Tomlinson. The last one, Patrick Mahomes. Think about that. I mentioned Drew Brees finished second in the MVP voting. He was arguably the best player in the league that particular year, finishing second only to LaDainian Tomlinson. And the last time that he was considered arguably the best player in the league, he finished second to Patrick Mahomes. That feels like it's 30 years apart. And Drew Brees was great and prolific the entire time. Like, between Russell Wilson and Drew Brees, there's no comparison. Even though Drew Brees only won one Super Bowl and never won an MVP, just like Russell Wilson. You got to dig a little bit deeper. Russell Wilson didn't get one MVP vote. The indelible image of Russell Wilson in a Super Bowl is him throwing the interception to Malcolm Butler. I would argue he wasn't a Hall of Famer when he was traded from Seattle to Denver, and he's certainly not a Hall of Famer now. I'll take your thoughts at 719-247-1313. This from the 719, this is Donnie. If Russell gets into the Hall of Fame, does that mean Joe Flacco should get into? This is exactly what I'm talking about. And I'll just back up a little bit here. This goes back to the Eli conversation we had a couple of weeks ago. Okay? There is one position in the NFL that gets everything, right? And that's the quarterback position. And I would argue, even though I am in general a bigger Hall of Fame guy, I like more people getting in there so there's more football history in Canton, but we have to draw the line somewhere. We are going to see every quarterback record obliterated 20 times over in the next 20 years. We have to draw the line. We can't just put every prolific quarterback into the Hall of Fame. There has to be a real reason. And Donnie, your text, as self-serving as it is, being that you are a Ravens fan, is exactly my point. If you let in Russell Wilson, why wouldn't you let in Joe Flacco? Joe Flacco, you could argue from beginning to end, had a better career than Russell Wilson. Certainly had more staying power. Joe Flacco's still a starting quarterback. He tries to go home and sit on his couch, and teams are like, no, Joe, we need you. Why not? Why wouldn't Joe Flacco be a Hall of Famer if Russell Wilson is? But it's these other guys. It's Phillip Rivers, not a Hall of Famer, in my opinion. I'm sorry. We got to have higher standards at the quarterback position, if nothing else. In fact, I prefer it that way. Let's have the highest of standards when it comes to quarterbacks. And every other, let's try to be a little bit, I don't want to say lax, but let's see if we can get some other neglected positions into the Hall of Fame. Right? Because we can get consumed by putting in 4 or 5 quarterbacks into the Hall of Fame, and they're coming at the expense of great defensive tackles and inside linebackers and safeties that don't get quite the fanfare that a quarterback does. I'm fine with that. Are you with me on that? Let's have very high standards when it comes to quarterbacks. And every other position, let's see where it gets us. Yeah, it just can't. This from the 719. If Russell Wilson would have excelled in Denver after Seattle, I would say, yeah, Hall of Fame, but he failed miserably and keeps failing. Precisely. Once again, you say few words when I many words. You got right to the heart of it. If Russell Wilson comes to the Denver Broncos and is exactly what the Broncos thought they were getting. He's not Peyton Manning, but he's in that, not even in that conversation. He has the successful second act, which I think is so important. The successful second act is what got Kurt Warner into the Hall of Fame. By the way, wouldn't put Kurt Warner in the Hall of Fame if I were running it. But the successful second act to his career, even though he was a failure with the Giants, got him in the Hall of Fame. Russell Wilson would have had the same thing. And now we're looking, not only are we saying that Russell Wilson had a successful stint with another team, which not a lot of guys can say, but now we're not even talking about him playing for the Steelers or the Giants, are we? Right? We're not even talking about it because Russell Wilson still would be under contract with the Denver Broncos. And Nathaniel Hackett would be the head coach. And I can't suspend reality that much. But yeah, if he was what he was supposed to be in Denver, then this wouldn't even be a conversation. He went to 2 franchises, was extremely productive. Who knows if he would have been what he was made out to be when he arrived in Denver? Who knows if Denver would have already knocked off Kansas City or gone to a Super Bowl? We'll never know. But the fact of the matter is he was not, and he was a failure. And there was a point where people were looking at the Russell Wilson trade as maybe the worst trade in the history of sport. That's where we were at. I'm sorry, he's not. Hall of Famer of a human being, Hall of Famer as a father, not a Hall of Fame quarterback. I'm sorry. We just can't do this. And if you're just relying on what he was in Seattle, then you're not telling the full story. And that's not the way you should be doing it. What he has done post-Seattle matters. 719-24-7, 1313. More Drive Time Sports after this.
Dan Patrick.
Welcome in hour 2 on this Wednesday. Good to have you. Appreciate you watching the show on our social media platforms. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, X, at XTRA Sports 1300. While you're there, like, subscribe, drop a comment, do all the things that you do on social media. You can also text into the show at 719-247-1313. The topic du jour with, I would think, Russell Wilson's career coming to an end with the benching in New York. Like, this is it. The adding to his resume is over. You can take Russell Wilson's resume right now. Is that a Hall of Fame resume? And I say no. I say it's not. And the idea that, he was a Hall of Famer when he was in Seattle. Look at what he did in Seattle. Okay, then maybe go to Russell Wilson and say you should have walked away at that time. Right? Barry Bonds. People say, well, he would have been a Hall of Famer just in Pittsburgh alone. No, he wouldn't. First of all. And second of all, so you're going to say that to ignore a good chunk of his career? This is not, and I know Russell Wilson did nothing like Barry Bonds. I'm just, the sports argument that I always hear for getting Barry Bonds into the Hall of Fame is, well, he was a Hall of Famer anyway. He was a Hall of Famer in Pittsburgh. Like, if you're a really good person for, let's say, till you're 60, and then for the last 30 years of your life, give or take, you are just a terrible person. Do you think that at your funeral, people are going to speak highly of you? That it's not going to matter? Well, you really take it, and for 2/3 of his life, he was a really nice guy. And then for the last part of it, he was, doing bad things. I know I'm veering further away, but my point is the totality of Russell Wilson's career matters. And if he were just like Michael Jordan, who made a year or two pit stop in Washington when he had everything else on his resume already, it's different. Russell Wilson, I think, would have been a borderline Hall of Famer at best if he would have walked away rather than going to Denver. And everything he has done since then, which has not been a year or two, it's been 5. He plays another year somewhere, somehow. He'd spend a third of his career not with Seattle. That's significant enough to say, I have to take this into account. I can't close my eyes and close my ears and ignore anybody who brings up what happened in Denver, Pittsburgh, New York, or points beyond. It's the most prestigious position in all of sports. We don't have to have the lowest bar to get these guys into the Hall of Fame. Take a couple of your thoughts here. From the 709, ring culture has seeped into this discussion. Many people will think Russell is a Hall of Famer simply because he has a ring. It's obvious that he should not get in, especially after his time in Denver. But even going back to the ring culture aspect of this, what Russell Wilson has a ring, right? Absolutely. He has one ring. Tell me one thing that Russell Wilson did in that football game in Super Bowl 48 in New York to help the Seattle Seahawks win that Super Bowl. And it encapsulates his entire Seattle career. Was it Russ and the Legion of Boom? Or did the Legion of Boom allow Russell Wilson to come along for the ride? To an extent. Again, I don't want to go too overboard and say that Russell Wilson was never good and never a prolific passer. Never got an MVP vote. Not one. But like we like to do, Brady Belichick. Shador and Travis, Deion Sanders. We like to split up the pie o credit. Do that for Seattle. This from the 575. Did Trent Dilfer go in when his defense won him a Super Bowl? Nope. Thank you. That's what I'm saying. Brad Johnson won a Super Bowl. Trent Dilfer won a Super Bowl. Is Russell Wilson better than those two guys? Of course he is. Of course he is. But my point is, not every quarterback who has won a Super Bowl should get an automatic ticket into Canton. Brad Johnson and Trent Dilfer are easy, right? You can go, yeah, no way. How about Joe Flacco? Is that an easy one? I kind of think so. To me, when you're trying to figure out who should or should not be in a Hall of Fame, I think you start with your gut first. And if you're like, I think not. Okay, well, that's a player that you should, or you say, I think so, you should do a little bit more digging because clearly you're on the fence about him. Russell Wilson can be that kind of a guy. I'm not saying that it's a waste of time to even discuss it. It's a waste of time to discuss whether Russell Wilson is going to do anything else in his NFL career. That's why I'm on to the Hall of Fame conversation. It's fine if you want to discuss it. But once you discuss it, once you really get into it, which you should be doing especially if you're a voter for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, you come back and you're like, yeah, no, he's not. And then you did your job. And this coming in from the 719 regarding Russell Wilson, it's the NFL Hall of Fame, not the NFL Hall of Good. They do that for baseball, don't they? Don't they have like an official Hall of Very Good? That's exactly what Russell Wilson should be in. Seattle Russell Wilson was very good. Very good quarterback. And then he did impact it in a negative way with what he did after. And Russell Wilson is not a victim, by the way, of the whole Denver situation. Like, that's the other part of this, too. Like, you know better than anybody because you were here. Did Russell Wilson handle his time with the Denver Broncos in the best way possible? Was he always the best teammate? Was he always pulling in the same direction as everybody else? No. So it's not like Sean Payton is a bad guy here and Russell Wilson's career was ruined by Sean Payton. Russell Wilson's career was ruined by Russell Wilson. Shouldn't say ruined. Sullied. I like that word better. Sullied. Take your thoughts. 719-24-7. 1313. This one coming in from the 719. Jim McMahon with the 85 Bears never went to the Hall of Fame, but the Bears in 85 won the Super Bowl. He wasn't a Hall of Fame quarterback either. Like Dilfer, Russell Wilson, you can name several. Expectations need to be high. It's an elite position. That's where I'm at. Perfect, Brian. That's exactly what I'm talking about here. It's okay to have one position that you're like, you know what? Bar's a little higher. Sorry. If you're a middle linebacker, if you're offensive tackle, kicker, if you're truly one of the best of the best, we'll put you in. Well, with quarterbacks, it's a higher bar. I have no problem with that. To wit, by the way, I was writing this down just to pivot a little bit from this. How many guys, if Russell Wilson is not, which I'm saying it's not, and I have not had one pro Russell Wilson Hall of Fame text yet. So if you're a pro Russell Wilson Hall of Fame person, get in now, because my perception based on the text line is that we are all on the same page. Dissenting opinions are welcome, encouraged. And I just, out of morbid curiosity, would love to know what the argument for Russell Wilson getting in the Hall of Fame is. 719-247-1313. Here's the list that I have. I really hate the, if he retired today, he'd be a Hall of Famer. I really hate that. Because they're not retiring today. I'm not rooting for them to blow out their knee tomorrow and never be able to play again. And it's the same thing with Russell Wilson. Let's let the whole thing play out, because there is such a thing as playing yourself out of the Hall of Fame or taking yourself off of a Hall of Fame trajectory. But the guys right now that I see that could retire today and probably be in the Hall of Fame: Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Aaron Rodgers, Von Miller. Yeah, you forgot he's still in the NFL playing for Washington. Trent Williams, Lane Johnson, Bobby Wagner, Mike Evans, Cam Jordan, and am I repeating myself and saying TJ Watt? Maybe I am. TJ Watt. Missing anybody? Khalil Mack is very close. But that's why I hate if he retired today. What do I get? A bunch of guys near the end of their career. Rodgers is just about done. Kelsey's about done. Von Miller's past done. Cam Jordan's about done. Bobby Wagner getting up there in years. Trent Williams, 49er fans, you know that you're dreading the day that he walks away, and you know it's coming quickly. Lane Johnson. Mike Evans is going to miss a few weeks. 10 straight 1,000-yard seasons, and he has a Super Bowl. 2 quarterbacks. One that's leading a dynasty. And if I had to pick one person that I'm a little wishy-washy on, it's probably Mahomes, for the exact same reason what I'm talking about with Russell Wilson. Yeah, what Patrick Mahomes has done already in his career. He just turned 30. You saw the graphic the other night on the was it the Eagles game that they were showing this, or was it the Sunday night game? Must have been the Sunday night game. Patrick Mahomes just turned 30. He's done this better than anybody has ever done it before the age of 30. Undeniable. What Patrick Mahomes has done as a quarterback by the time he hit 30, He's done it better than any other quarterback in the history of football. But he's 30. What happens if tomorrow Patrick Mahomes' career is over? Or let's say he goes on the Dan Patrick show and he throws his offensive lineman under the bus, and that makes the Chiefs trade him, and he goes to the Denver Broncos and he's a failure and gets Sean Payton fired and so on and so forth. What if Patrick Mahomes follows the same arc of his career that Russell Wilson did? He's done more with his career before the age of 30 than any quarterback in the history of football, and he can absolutely play himself out of the Hall of Fame. So I think that Aaron Rodgers is the only quarterback currently playing in the National Football League that even if his career was over tomorrow, which it's not tomorrow, but it's going to be soon, right, would be a Hall of Famer. Patrick Mahomes can play himself out of it. I don't foresee him playing himself out of it, but I also don't foresee that Lamar Jackson is going to fall off a Hall of Fame trend or Josh Allen. People probably said that about Russell Wilson, didn't they? Well, he's certainly on a Hall of Fame trajectory. That's why you got to be careful. So much in life is about timing, right? Better leave the party too early than too late. 719-24-7. 1313. I'll ask Jessica Mendoza if she thinks Russell Wilson is a Hall of Famer. That and Broncos related subjects coming up next. Welcome back to the show. My guest, you see her on a nightly basis on KKTV 11 News. She is Jessica Mendoza. Jessica, how are you this afternoon?
Doing good. How about you?
I'm doing great. I can hear you okay.
You can.
Yeah. No, you came in really hot right there, but we got it adjusted and we're ready to go. Were you listening to were your ears burning earlier? Were you listening when I was in the last segment?
No, I've been listening to some CC hockey sound. What's going on?
Okay, well, first of all, that's rude, and you need to readjust your priorities on what you're listening to on an afternoon basis. No. Is Russell Wilson a Hall of Famer?
Old Russell Wilson. I mean, I guess you get all of Russell Wilson as he was, right? It's interesting because he came into Denver, and I think the answer would have been yes. And then you just have such a poor last 3-4 years that it kind of murkies the water. What is that? Muddies the water.
Muddies the water. Yeah, makes the water murkier.
Yes, it makes things a little murky. Thank you. Wow, it feels like a Monday or something. But yeah, if I had to say, I guess I would say no. I would say that these last few years have kind of changed my view and my vision of Russell Wilson to the point where I couldn't put him in the Hall of Fame. No.
But you cut to the heart of the matter right off the bat there. I mean, it matters. It matters what has happened since he's left Seattle. And it's been long enough since he's left Seattle. Like, that's the other part of it too. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. Let me ask you this. Name off the top of your head how many NFL players right now could walk into Canton, regardless of what happened from here on out.
Yeah.
Anybody come to mind?
No, I mean, it all matters at the end of the day, right? You can't just stop keeping score once you have a Super Bowl or whatever.
I would say I mentioned this last segment. I think Aaron Rodgers is good, right? Aaron Rodgers is marked safe because he's not going to be playing for another 5 years, right? So Aaron Rodgers, would you agree, would go into the Hall of Fame tomorrow if his career ended?
Yeah, and I think those are two similar cases. So I think some people could look at me and be like, "How are you going to let Aaron Rodgers in and not Russell Wilson?" But I think it's just more so what the whole picture, the whole body of work, and what's happened in the last few years definitely matters. Well,
and Aaron Rodgers post Green Bay has not been as long as Russell Wilson post Seattle. Aaron Rodgers was much better than Russell Wilson if we're just comparing Green Bay to Seattle.
Right.
You know what I mean? So we're on the same page on this.
Isn't it wild that we were not so far from thinking Aaron Rodgers was going to be a Denver Bronco? Like, doesn't that just feel like, and it makes you wonder what could be different, right? Like, could he have had a really good career in Denver? Or, I don't know. It's just funny to think about how we were so convinced that, I don't know about you. I mean, this was years ago. This was when I just had started in this market. I don't know if you were totally sold on Aaron Rodgers coming to Denver, but
wild. Oh, no, I believed it. Yeah. I mean, I believed it because there were, not to, name names, but there were some pretty high profile people in local media that were like, this thing is done. I absolutely thought that Aaron Rodgers was going to be a Denver Bronco. And I wonder too, do you think had that not, let's just say this was a negotiation that played itself out behind closed doors and we never found out about it.
Yeah.
Do you think that the Broncos do eventually end up with Russell Wilson? Because I kind of think that George Payton was like, well, I got to do something now. Everyone thinks that I failed to get Aaron Rodgers.
That's interesting. I don't know. I mean, maybe. I don't know. That's a good point. I never really thought about the impact of how public that all got before anything was really happening. how that would have affected anything. But I just wonder, like, if the Hackett and the Russell Wilson, the combo was just so poor, and if maybe the Hackett and the Aaron Rodgers combo would have like done a little bit more for the Broncos that first year. I have no idea. Like, if Hackett would still be here, like, things could be so different, right? So it's hard to say.
I think it would be a little bit better than Russ and Nathaniel Hackett in Denver. I can at least say that much, that it would be a little bit better. I don't know, better enough. Jessica Mendoza, my guest, KKTV 11 News. I asked you this question last week. Would you amend your answer to the what is the most concerning thing about the Denver Broncos? Last week you said it was the lack of complementary football. Would you stick with that still, or would you want to change after watching the LA game?
Well, I think the lack of complementary football is the big picture, right? I mean, we still haven't seen it this season, and if we had, the Broncos could probably be 3-0. But also, when you really get into the nitty gritty, if the Broncos didn't have so many penalties the last 2 weeks, they would also be 3-0. If Bo Nix took, a centimeter off of those deep passes, to Marvin Mims and to Cortland Sutton, they could be 2-1. So, there's a lot of concerning things that I'm seeing now after 3 weeks. But I think at the end of the day, if they were playing more complementary football, maybe some of those penalties wouldn't have mattered so much. It really stood out to me watching Monday Night Football, watching the Lions move the ball downfield on 4th and 4 or 4th and 6. And it's like, they make it look so easy. And Sean Payton complains about these 3rd and long situations. And yes, of course, you don't want to be in those situations, but the fact that the Broncos can never convert them, there's a lot of concern there for a lot of reason.
Did you think Bo Nix would be better by now?
100%. 100%. I mean, especially all the training camp hype, everything that Sean Payton was talking about all summer long about, the play calls are rolling off of his tongue so much quicker. He's got this down. He looks more confident. Even just the mental side of the game, I thought that would really have so much of a bigger impact on his play, but he looks uncomfortable. He looks not confident. So it's quite the opposite of, I feel like, what we were advertising all summer long. Not that he's had 3 awful games. I think he's looked a little bit better each week. But certainly not the Bo Nix that I was expecting in year 2.
Jessica Mendoza, my guest. I think you know this, but just for the edification of the audience, their next 4 games. Well, actually, let me go. I'll go 5. Let's go through October. Cincinnati, Philly, the 2 New York teams. The Jets game is in London, just for those who it's a neutral site game. Dallas. What will the 1-2 Denver Broncos be by the time Halloween rolls around? How many of those do you think right now would you say the Broncos would win?
I think they should win 3. We're
So
talking
Monday and the 2 New York, you're saying definitely, right? Or are you saying that the Bengals, Giants, Cowboys?
I think they should beat the Bengals this Monday.
Right.
I think they can lose to the Eagles. We got Jets, they should beat. Giants, they should beat. And I guess
what about Dallas?
No, they should beat the Cowboys too. Yep. Sorry, I can't count. That's why I'm in this industry.
Right. Math is not part of our I think in order to get study the fields that you and I did, I think we just had to be able to answer the question, what's 2 + 2? And
no, thanks for the assist.
Right. Yeah.
No, those were all very winnable games.
Yeah.
Those are all very winnable games, minus the Eagles there on October 5th. So I think it's a good situation for the Broncos because, as they're clearly having a lot to work through, they still have a lot to figure out. I think they still need to get their run game going a little bit more. I think those will be some really good opportunities to do so. But I also think, you don't always win the games that you're supposed to win. The good teams do, but the Broncos that we've covered the past few years certainly haven't. So there's a good chance that they drop one of those that they should win at the very least.
Okay, now let me take it a different way. Which one of those games do the Broncos have to win to change the perception about them? Because there's a point I'm trying to get at. So
yeah, I think I know what you're trying to get at, and I think this is something you probably talked about. I think it was Monday and Tuesday when I was listening to your show, Ryan. Is if they wanted to change the way that people think about them, I think they have to beat the Eagles. I think they have to beat a good team. And so, all those games that, we marked off of those 4 leading up until Halloween, those are all games that, the Denver Broncos that we were advertised and that we were told all about and who they believe they think they are. They should win those 4 games. But the one that, we're counting them out of, that's the one that they would need to win to really change, the mindset of how the football world is looking at them right now.
And you know what's funny about that? And I 100% agree with you. Hasn't that been the last 2 years of Broncos football? Like, I feel like you and I had the same conversations when Russ was the quarterback. And then we had the same conversations when Bo Nix was in his rookie year. It's like the same thing. Slow start. Yeah, I'm kind of out on this team. And then they go on a run, but how real is the run? Remember 2 years ago, they went up against Josh Dobbs and they had these, the Bills had too many men on the field and all of this kind of stuff. And then ultimately we found, they came up short, and then Bo Nix kind of the same way. And now here we are, year 3. It's the same thing. People bail after a few weeks. Then the Broncos set to go on a big run, but we still don't know quite what they are. I think we got to wait till like after the bye week to really know who this Broncos team is.
Yeah, and we always joke about how I'm kind of the optimist and you're kind of more the realist, and you're always, kind of bringing us back to reality as everyone else is talking about, Super Bowl caliber and deepest roster in the NFL. But I think when you bring up the fact that the Broncos' most legitimate and best win, they only have one really good win in recent, in the Bo Nix era, and that was last year with Tampa Bay. So I think, they have to find ways to beat some really good teams. And I guess I'm looking at week 5. That'd be a great opportunity.
First things first, gotta beat Cincinnati. Must win Monday night for you?
I think so. I think it kind of is. Yeah. I mean, another, you can't drop another AFC game like that against a backup quarterback. I feel pretty good about it. Just because of, who the Bengals have been and, what happened against the Vikings recently. I think the Broncos, even playing the kind of football that they played the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I think they could still beat this Bengals team. But I do feel like this is high stakes coming up on Monday.
Well, like clockwork, every single night around 10:20-ish, I am locked in to KKTV watching Jessica Mendoza. Unlike when 3 o'clock in the afternoon rolls around and Jessica's listening to people who are not me. I'm not saying that I win that, but it's just true. So check out Jessica. 10 o'clock, 5:30, not necessarily in that particular order each night on KKTV, and your time is running out to see Jess for a while. So, Jessica, as always, appreciate your time and your insight, and look forward to the next time you and I get chat.
Thanks, Ryan. Can you just keep me here so I can listen for the rest of the show?
Yes.
So I'll be listening one way or another. So
I appreciate you. Thank you, Jessica.
Thanks.
This is Jessica Mendoza of KKTV 11. It's on. No, I'm not calling her out, but I am. She bailed. She wanted me to keep her on, and I said I would, and she bailed. That's fine. I'm not hurt by that. I'm devastated by that. Back-to-back guests coming up. The Ryder Cup Coming up this weekend, us versus them. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Team USA versus Europe. Jay Ritchie stops by to give a preview next. Welcome back, Drive Time Sports. Yes, we are in the throes of the football season, but there is another sporting event that may divert your attention a little bit as the Ryder Cup takes place up in the great state of New York. And joining me now, someone who will be on his way shortly to join the festivities, the host of Tee to Green Radio. He is Jay Ritchie. Jay, pleasure to have you today.
Thanks for having me on, Ryan. It's been a while.
It has been as the kids say, a minute. So I was talking with somebody earlier about this, and I want to pose you this question. From a bystander or a fan perspective, which is better, the Masters or the Ryder Cup?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would, you know what? Over the last few years, I would say Ryder Cup.
And what breaks that tie? If there was a time where maybe they were neck and neck, what has put the Ryder Cup over the top for you as an event?
Yeah, the Ryder Cup has become, I think, the biggest event in golf over the last decade or so, maybe the last 15, going back 20 years. It's like a major on steroids, is the way I would describe it. I mean, nothing against the Masters or the U.S. Open, but you throw in the fact that you're playing for your country and you're playing for your teammates, and the fans are rabid as far as, you know, you go over to Europe and they're just going crazy, and they come over here to the U.S. and the U.S. fans are trying to match what they saw out of the European fans, and it just ratchets everything up several degrees.
You said the last couple years you would move the Ryder Cup above the Masters. What happened a couple years ago?
Well, I wouldn't say last couple of years. I would say the last several Ryder Cups, and just the way it's gotten into the sports universe.
Yeah,
and the way the fans have taken to it. Once you could say Ryder Cup 25, 30 years ago, and everybody go, oh yeah, that's that match play. I don't like match play. Now everybody understands match play, and they see I wouldn't want a steady diet of match play, but to do it once in a while and to do it in an event like the Ryder Cup or the Solheim Cup, I think it's great.
Jay Ritchie, host of Tee to Green Radio, my guest. And that's what I'm curious what that is. You know, recently we've had, like, just because it's off the top of my head, like Caitlin Clark is representing this tipping point for the WNBA to grow in popularity. I don't know why I didn't start with Tiger Woods. That would be the most apples to apples comparison. Tiger Woods in his ascension was a tipping point for the sport of golf. So I'm genuinely curious what in the last few years has provided that, because Tiger's been around for longer than that. And in Tiger, you know, I don't know if Tiger lifted up the game of golf overall, right? But I'm just wondering what that catalyst has been for the Ryder Cup specifically inside the golf ecosystem. I'd be curious to figure out what that might be, where the Ryder Cup, if there was one thing that made kind of the Ryder Cup take off, because I'm with you. I mean, this is a great event, and I'm curious what that might be.
I don't know if you could put your finger on one specific thing. Tiger, as great as he was never a dominant Ryder Cup player. Same with Phil in his prime. So you can't say superstars elevated the game. I think just familiarity with it, and the fans getting more familiar with how it worked and how match play works versus the other. And then, you know, I think Brookline, when the U.S. team came back on the last day, everybody wrote him off for dead.
Mm-hmm.
And they came back on Sunday in the singles and the putt by Justin Leonard that won it. And everybody just lost their minds. And I think if you could look at one moment, that could be it.
Mm. Jay Ritchie joining me. He will be on hand for the Ryder Cup this weekend. So what, and maybe it's the same answer, or I'll just let you take it in whatever direction you want to. What event or what matchup within the Ryder Cup are you most intrigued by?
Well, I think everybody would love to see on Sunday in the singles matches down to the wire with maybe the whole Ryder Cup on the line, Scotty Scheffler versus Rory McIlroy.
Mm.
I mean, it wouldn't get any better than that. I don't know if that could happen or if that will happen, but that would be prime time for golfers.
Yeah, that would be quite something. Who would be, or what would be, you think, the U.S.'s biggest vulnerability? What event, what golfer do you think that the U.S. is going to have to navigate their way around, that they may have to, I don't want to say compensate, but I guess that's what I'm saying. What event, what golfer do you think is a bit vulnerable this weekend for the U.S.?
Well, I don't know if it's any specific golfer, but I think as a team, the U.S. is lacking, especially when you put them up against the European squad. They're really lacking in experience. I mean, Justin Thomas has played 13 Ryder Cup matches. He's our most experienced player. After that, you've got Cantlay, Morikawa, and Schauffele, who've played 8. Look at Europe. Rory McIlroy's played 33 Ryder Cup matches. Justin Rose, 26. John Rahm's played a dozen. Tyrrell Hatton's played 11. Tommy Fleetwood's played a dozen. And as far as winning, the U.S. has 3 players who have a winning record in Ryder Cup play. Team Europe has a half a dozen. They have 6 players. So I think the definite edge goes to Europe as far as experience. And the European team did something I don't think it's ever been done in Ryder Cup. They brought back their entire brain trust. The captain is Luke Donald, and he's got all of his assistant captains, vice captains, whatever you want to call them, Thomas Bjorn, Edward and Francisco Molinari, Alex Noren, Jose Maria Olazabal, all the same guys who were the assistant captains to Luke Donald in Italy 2 years ago when they beat the U.S.
So I don't want to put words into your mouth, but as you're talking, I'm seeing a scenario that if the U.S. gets up on Europe early, let's say after Friday, can't count out Europe. But if Europe gets on the U.S., that becomes a little bit more dicey. Am I that a fast start to this event on Friday would be in the U.S.'s best interest?
Yeah, I think no matter what the situation is or when the Ryder Cup's played and where it's played, a fast start is huge. But again, you know, it's not how you start; it's how you finish.
Yeah. Well, we'll see, and we're hoping that we finish with Rory McIlroy versus Scotty Scheffler. But we got a few days to get there. Jay Ritchie's got to travel out there. Safe travels, my friend, and we'll check in with you later this week and see how things are going.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Ryan.
Appreciate you, Jay. That is Jay Ritchie. He is the host of Tee to Green Radio. You can hear it every Sunday morning at 8 a.m. right here on Extra Sports 1300. You know, not to call anybody out, I guess I called out Jessica Mendoza of KKTV in the last segment. I'm just joking, obviously. I will call out my brother. My brother lives and works in the golf industry in that part of the world, yet I got nothing on this device inviting me to the Ryder Cup. None. He lives down the block. No invite. Rude. I'll have to watch on TV like everybody else. So we'll keep an eye on that. We'll get Jay back on Friday, and if this thing is, it's actually a great weekend. If you think about for the Ryder Cup, Broncos don't play till Monday night. So how good's the NFL slate going to be? Maybe mix in some Ryder Cup. See how Friday and Saturday goes. If it's been a blowout, then you're free to resume your NFL watching on Sunday. But looking forward to it. Love the Ryder Cup. And Jay will be on hand to give us all the details. I'm looking at the clock, and I got to get down to Widener Field. Switchbacks taking on New Mexico United this evening. Kickoff is at 7. Would love to have you join me, either on air, online, or through the Extra Sports 1300 app. If I do not have that honor, I hope to be talking to you tomorrow at 3 here on Extra Sports 1300.